So you buy books, but you don't read them. Let's chat about that. Oh, and I'm not one to judge because honestly, same. If you've ever had anybody look at your shelf of books and ask if you've read everything on it and you've obviously said no, then this is for you. If your shelves and piles of books are constantly growing and you can't keep up with them fast enough, then this is for you. And if you've ever had that dreaded feeling that you will never get through all the books you've bought, then yes, this is for you too. Last time I talked about this subject back in 2021, I said I'm not the type of person to buy excess books. Well, let's just say it didn't take long for that to change a few years later, and social media influence, a constant stream of exciting books coming out, and an increase in my personal reading has meant I well and truly buy more books than I can read. In other words, it's a little like I read one book for every 4 I buy, which if we're keeping track likely means I will never read all the books I buy. I'm always going to be behind. Sound familiar? I thought as much. You book buying menace you? Okay, so we know it happens, but I don't know about you, but I always need to know the reason why. As an adult, I'm like a child when it comes to understanding philosophy. Why do we buy more books than we read? Why do I ignore the books I already have and keep buying more? Why? Because there's got to be a reason. Obviously there is a reason, otherwise I wouldn't have been creating this video, and look, here I am trying to look all fancy with my laptop. The reason why we buy more books than we will ever read is... well, there are a few, so I'll just explain them to you. Okay, get ready for this one because you're gonna feel so seen. There's something called the intention-action gap, which is a psychological disconnect between our intentions, or what we plan to achieve, and our actual actions, or what we ultimately do. In other words, the gap between us buying a book to read and actually reading it. This kind of thing can apply to pretty much everything. Let's say you buy some DIY or craft tools, but you don't actually end up doing the DIY or craft. Or say you're going to start running again, but you don't actually go running. It's all the same thing. When we buy a new book, our intention is to read it. Part of this phenomenon is that we feel like we've already taken a big step towards reading it, like the job is already half done. It's one of the reasons why when you buy a self-help book, you feel better before you've even read the book. The moment we buy a book about productivity or confidence or something like mindfulness, we get an immediate sense of accomplishment. We imagine ourselves implementing the advice, making progress, and becoming the kind of person who has read the book. But once that initial excitement wears off, the book often sits untouched because the actual work, reading, absorbing, and applying the information is much harder than just buying it. Clearly, because I've not actually read one of my self-help books behind me yet. Fiction books also work in the same way. We might buy them because we intend to read more classics, but never get past the first chapter. We love the idea of being a person who reads literary fiction, epic fantasy, or mystery novels. We experience FOMO when a book is trending, so we grab it, but don't actually feel the urge to read it right away. Sounds about right, doesn't it? Dopamine boost is a huge reason why we buy books, but we don't always read them. Dopamine is the brain's reward chemical. It drives motivation, anticipation, and pleasure, but here's the catch. Dopamine surges when we buy a book, not necessarily when we read a book. This happens because purchasing a book is an exciting moment. Our brains get a rush of reward just from imagining what the book will be like, and at that moment we already feel satisfied even though the real reward, actually reading the book, hasn't happened yet. This is why buying books can become addictive. Each new purchase gives us another dopamine hit, reinforcing the cycle. We see a book that looks amazing, we imagine ourselves reading it, enjoying it, and benefiting from it. We buy it and feel good immediately. But once we own it, the excitement fades and reading it feels like effort. A new book catches our eye and the cycle begins again. Okay, so both of these make a lot of sense, right? The intention-action gap is absolutely happening, and the dopamine thing is not something we can argue with. But my question to you is, do we think it's a bad thing or not? Let's say you're like me. You've noticed that your books are getting a little bit out of control and you would like to reduce the number before buying more. In that case, something needs to be done, and I'll get to that in a second. If, however, you like building your own personal library, you like the fact that you have a lot of books to pick from at any time, in any genre, for any mood, you love seeing little piles of books all around your house, and you couldn't care less that your monthly budget is pretty much completely spent on books, well then you carry on. There is absolutely nothing wrong with buying more books than you can read if you absolutely love doing it. But what about the Ginas out there? The ones that like having books on their shelves but don't want them to feel overwhelming or unmanageable. The type of people who just want to develop slightly better book buying and reading habits and ratios. You, my friend, have options. Let's get down to business. If you really want to reduce the amount of books you buy and start reading the ones you already have, you've got to go on a book buying ban. Wait, don't close the video. I know, ban is a strong word, so stick with me because it doesn't need to be a big intimidating thing that ruins your love for reading or feels like a chore. I recently posted a video announcing that I'm going on a book buying ban. In that video, I walk through my personal rules for the ban. They're pretty standard. I can't buy any new books, I can receive gifts, I can still have my audiobook subscription, blah, blah, blah. You get the point, and you can watch the whole video after this if you want to. But you know you. My ban rules might be a little much, but that's the beauty of it. It's your ban. So just like some friends in my Discord server have, you can make your own rules. Some people are allowing comics and graphic novels, others are allowing series books so that they can finish the series that they've started. Some allow pre-orders or new books if the author is on their auto-buy list. Others are keeping their book subscription box. The general idea is that you tailor the ban to you so you can get through the books you own without making it a horrible experience. If you're thinking about doing this too, then come join us in Discord and we can keep each other motivated on our personal bans. Okay, but let's say you don't want to do a ban of any kind. Well, what then? In this case, you can set your own personal challenges. I've done a TBR brown paper challenge in the past, which was a lot of fun. I'll leave the video in the description, but you essentially wrap up your books in brown paper, number them, and pull a number out of a jar. It helps you get through your books without seeing what you'll be reading, because sometimes we can't help but look at the covers and think, nah, not today. This will combat that. If that doesn't work for you, then you've just got to have some serious self-control to avoid buying quite as many new books and really focus on reading what you have. If it helps you grasp things, count all the books you've owned and you've not read yet, log them in something like the story graph so you can really see where you stand. Sometimes just seeing the numbers will help jolt you into action. Okay, so what do you think? Do you think you own more books than you could ever read? Are you okay with it? And if you're reducing your numbers, add some tips in the comments so that we can learn from each other. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time for another video.